With RuneScape on the verge of releasing their 29th skill, I think it's the perfect time to look back at the other 28 skills and look at the good, the bad, and the ugly and decide what skill is actually the best. Let's talk about it. Yo, what's going on guys? My name's Velric and today we're going to be talking about skills in RuneScape and which one is actually the best. Or well, I'm going to argue which I think is the best because at the end of the day, it's all personal preference. You might absolutely love a skill or you might absolutely hate a skill, but that doesn't make it good or bad. For example, I think dungeoneering is a terrible skill personally, but in general, it's actually quite an interesting concept if you really think about it. And I definitely want to hear from you in the comment sections down below. What is your favorite skill and what do you think is the best skill? And do you think your favorite skill is actually the best skill? Because in the case of me, my favorite skill is actually, in my opinion, one of the best skills, and I will argue that later on in the video. A little disclaimer though, I'm going to be looking at it from a main perspective because I do believe that RuneScape is designed with the idea of mains. Obviously, when RuneScape was designed initially, you could trade between players and a lot of skills were designed around that. And I feel like RuneScape, at least Jagex has said it in the past, that they don't necessarily design content around Iron Man. However, I feel like Iron Man also gets a different list because crafting, for example, on a main is very useless. You just get it to 99 and that's it. But on an Iron Man, it's a very useful skill. So it's a different perspective, but if you want to see that perspective in the future, I can make a video on that as well if you want to. But if you're going to enjoy it, definitely go give it a like. Join in with discussion in the comment section down below. As I said, subscribe video, join my Twitch channel in the description down below. I stream every day at 6 PM game time. Join the Discord as well for discussions and everything, and let's just get into the video. So I kind of ordered these skills in 3 categories. Not that special, interesting concepts, but there's just a little bit wrong with it or bad execution. And just overall great skills. And the last one, obviously, I will argue why I think those are the best skills in RuneScape and why Necromancy especially should build on top of that. So when it comes to attack, defense, strength, range, magic, and HP, they're just kind of skills that just have to be there. Obviously, a little bit of an interesting thing about it is that in RuneScape, you can train all of them and it doesn't really change your account. A lot of MMOs and RPGs require you to pick one style when you start your account, and that's kind of what your character is. You're either a battle mage, or you're a healer, or you're an archer, or you're a big melee tank with like big, slow, strong weapons, for example. And RuneScape, you can do it all. It just depends on what gear you have. But overall, they're just there and there's nothing too special about them. Same goes with a lot of these other ones like cooking and fishing and crafting and fletching. Fun fact about fishing, by the way. If an MMO doesn't have fishing, it's not an MMO because every MMO actually has fishing. And obviously, you can cook the fish. I do want to say that something interesting about cooking is that you can get boosts and stuff, but worst skills are crafting and fletching, let's be honest. Especially on a main, you just train them to 99 and that's it. There's not really a use to it. And especially not when it comes to fire making, because it's literally burning money. Yeah, incense sticks, for example, are something I can think of that is useful for fire making. But I feel like that's just one of those things like, oh, let's just have fire making to give it some use or something. And even worse is woodcutting. But I feel like woodcutting in essence is not really poorly designed. I think it's a really chill skill and very simple and not that special. That's why it's here. But the issue just with me is, and as I said in multiple videos, if you've been watching them, is that I think it's just poorly designed when it comes to leveling, right? You get to level 42 and you unlock your best training method until level 95. They need to do something about it and change the experience rates a little bit as well because they're absolutely terrible. Getting into more interesting skills, but still not that special, but more towards the interesting concepts but bad execution vibes, are farming, herblore, hunter, and thieving. So I think farming is a great skill, and I think it's a very interesting skill. And I love how you can, farm your own supplies. And that's why I really like how they updated it so that herb farming actually is a good money maker and it's the best way to get herbs. And even probably if you want to make your own overloads, speaking of herblore, it's a really good thing. However, the issue with farming is ever since player-owned farms was introduced, especially for mains, it kind of just killed off the entire farming skill, the rest of it, because you don't need to do tree runs, you don't need to do any other runs besides your player-owned farm because it gives such good experience, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it does suck a little bit that it kind of killed the core skill. And that's kind of the topic with 2 of the other ones. But let's quickly touch on herblore. I generally think that herblore is not that special at all, but it just has a little bit more of a special place because they artificially lock you into training this skill because otherwise you cannot get the best potion in the game. if it wasn't for overloads and having to half the level to do overloads, I would feel that Herblore would kind of fall in the category of crafting and fletching. Skills you would get to 99, or in the case of Herblore, 120, and then never use again. And obviously, when it comes to Herblore, there are certain potions that you can just not buy with the Grand Exchange, or you need to make them. But then again, you could argue that that makes it a bad skill, because if it wasn't for that artificial barrier, Herblore would just be another crafting or fletching skill. So it is what it is. But as I alluded to earlier, skills that have like good aspects but kind of killed off the core skill, or just are not really utilizing it, are Hunter and Thieving. I think Hunter is an amazing skill when you look at big game Hunter. That is what real Hunter to me feels like. You have this big enemy, you need to do this like convoluted thing, and then you can hunt an actual dinosaur. Obviously, it doesn't have to be dinosaurs, it can be any mob, but it is such a cool concept. And then the majority of the skill, besides dinosaur hunting, is literally just put a trap down, wait, click on the trap, and that's it. There's nothing real engaging about it. But if Hunter was actually like Big Game Hunter for the entire skill, it would have been like an S tier, top tier skill in my opinion. When it comes to thieving, it's kind of the same with save cracking. I think save cracking is an incredible concept that makes it such an engaging, fun skill, but when it comes to the regular training by just pickpocketing, it's just not that special, right? Like, it kind of sucks, let's be honest. But coming into the more interesting concepts, but just bad execution skills, I want to touch on agility. I think agility is a really interesting concept. You can unlock shortcuts with it, and you can do free running within RuneScape. However, it's just very badly executed. The concept in general, if you pitch that to someone that has never played RuneScape, be like, yo, there's a skill, right, that you can train, and you're literally free running, and you unlock all these shortcuts around the map to make you travel around the map quicker, and you can just move around a lot quicker. People be like, yo, that's sick, I want to train it. And then you're just running a course for hours up and hours up and hours up and end, which kind of sucks. But another thing that really sucks about it are the shortcuts, because they're not actually that useful. A lot of the shortcuts are very obsolete and just not really that relevant to use. Like, tell me the last time you have actually used a shortcut in RuneScape. I can't really think of any, besides maybe when I do Elite Clue Scrolls and use the shortcuts in the Teverly dungeon. But that's about it. There are not that many useful agility shortcuts, and I would love to see them actually add in an interesting shortcut around the game that actually cut out time when you're walking around, whether it's a quest or whether it's you doing clue scrolls or anything else that require you to move around the game. When it comes to another skill that I think is really interesting in concept, but it's just very poorly executed, is divination. You can weave this energy into actual useful things, but in general, there are not that many useful things besides maybe porters. Because, sure, you can have a Sign of Life, but it is in your pocket slot, and you'd rather have a DPS book in your pocket slot. Maybe it's useful for early game or for hardcore Iron Man, but it's just no. And the leveling is quite boring as well. I generally think that the Divine Conversion Relic, which allows you to throw in all the energy in one go, should just be how divination works, because that would make it a lot better. And maybe make it so Divine Conversion gives you extra experience or something. Or you could do the experience mode and get energy or something. Make it a little bit better, but that's just when it comes to divination. As I alluded to earlier, dungeoneering. I don't like dungeoneering, but I generally think it's a really interesting concept. But it's just very poorly executed, because the experience you get for the effort you put in is just not really there. Like, it takes a long time to train dungeoneering up, and especially solo, it's really tedious as well. Like, you're better off going into groups. I know they tweaked solo a little bit, but it's still not great. And obviously, I made a whole video about group content and why it's dying. Go check it out if you're really interested in it. But I feel like dungeoneering can really benefit from an experience boost. If dungeoneering was a lot quicker when it came to actually training the skill, and maybe even reward you for interacting more with the dungeon than just running through it as quickly as you can, opening all the doors, and then fighting the boss, then it might actually be a more interesting skill, and maybe even make the elite dungeons the way to train it at higher levels, and have it actually unlock the elite dungeons at like level 80 or something, and then you can train dungeoneering with about equivalent rates to what you would get at level 80 dungeoneering in the actual dungeons, but via elite dungeons. That would be so much better, but hey-oh, that's just me. Another skill that I think is very interesting concept, but I actually think that cannot be fixed, is construction. And the reason why is because the only way I can see them fixing construction or making construction better is if they do something like old school RuneScape. If you don't know what old school RuneScape does, is your house is pretty much your hub for teleports, healing your character, and like restoring pretty much what the wars alt are. And I guess, well, they don't have adrenaline crystals, but the effect of adrenaline crystals resetting your abilities is kind of what your house does. If you have the pool, you can have a fairy ring in your house, you can have a spirit tree in your house, etc., and a lot of teleports. And it's very useful for old school RuneScape, but in RuneScape 3 we have a Passion of the Abyss for teleports, we have a portable fairy ring, we have a portable spirit tree, we have War's Retreat, which is a free teleport, an infinite teleport, and you get everything there, right? So there's no use for it. So you could argue, okay, you can make it, but I also don't think you want people to be in instances all the time, because that is not really an issue in old school because they have a lot more players. But in RuneScape 3, Wars is actually busy, but let's think about you having to restore everything in your house, and you actually have boss portals in your house, then no one would actually go to wars anymore. So I feel like construction is one of those skills that they cannot really fix. Maybe the For the Fun tree might change my mind. We'll see. If it does, I'll make a video on it. But another skill that I think is very interesting concept is rune crafting. You craft your own runes, and it sounds like such a magical skill, but it's really boring. There's nothing to it. Like, hello, you just craft runes. Like, it could even go into the category of, like, not that special. And I feel like it's one of those skills as well. If you pitch it to someone, it's really cool. Like, you can craft your own runes. You need to go to these altars and whatever. Maybe something like the minigame that you have in old school RuneScape, which is Eye of the Abyss or something. It's pretty much like a minigame where you need to go to different altars to defeat this, like, skilling boss type thing. It's quite interesting. If you're interested in it, go check it out. Like, just type in a rune crafting skilling boss, old school RuneScape. Really interesting, and that's something like RuneScape 3 could do better as well. And lastly is summoning. When it comes to the interesting concept, bad executions, there's only like a few familiars that are really useful, and the rest are really just relevant. And the way you train it, I feel like it's also just a bit strange. Like, you craft pouches to train it, and how does that make you a better summoner? Shouldn't you be summoning the pouches? But then again, imagine if you have to summon the pouches, discard, summon, discard, summon, discard. That would also be tedious. But it would be better if you could just do combat with your summoning and just passively train it. But those are just skills that I think are either just plain out boring or interesting concept but badly executed. Let's get into the actual great skills. First of all, prayer. You probably wouldn't think prayer would be in here, and probably would be in like either the first or second category, but I think prayer is actually a very interesting skill if you really think about it. It protects you from incoming damage, but it can also boost you, and it has so many other effects like Crystal Mast and the light form, and being able to do crystallize with it. And I think having like multiple prayer books as well, even though it's tedious sometimes, is a really interesting concept too. And you know, Soul Split is incredible in my opinion, for you to be able to heal back the damage that you do with the damage, but in trade-off of you not being able to protect yourself from incoming damage. I think that's a really well designed skill, and I think it's just really good. It might have some issues, but I generally really like it. Another skill that I think is very well designed and especially very well remade are mining and smithing. I think mining and smithing now have such good synergy, and I know I wouldn't look at it from an Iron Man perspective, but it's just really great if you train mining, save your resources, and then train smithing. Obviously it's not like equivalent, which I think it should be. I think if you get 80 mining, those resources should be equivalent to 80 smithing. Obviously, if you get like the two different resources, but that's just me. But even so, smithing the best in slot armor instead of getting it from a drop is actually really interesting as well when it comes to Trip Masterwork. And I think they just did a great job by actually making a skill that I absolutely despise when it comes to mining into a skill that I really do not mind, and having the synergy between them and just in general how they are designed and how they especially remade smithing are incredible. Another skill, and I think it used to be a lot of people's favorite skill, is Slayer. The concept of Slayer is actually the quest concept of many other MMOs, which is really interesting, because especially in World of Warcraft, for example, you go to an NPC and it's like, oh yeah, can you slay like 10 pigs for me? You go slay 10 pigs, and that's just the entire quest. And in RuneScape, it is a skill. I mean, you could argue that it's boring, but I do like it because it's like just this one singular skill, and it requires you to slay different mobs to train up either your combat stats or your Slayer skill. Because quite frankly, when it comes to combat, if it wasn't for Slayer, I think a lot of people would just go to ED3. I mean, they still do that, and then just get to 99 and that's it. And with Slayer, that gives you another option to train it in a more varied way. But let's get into the two skills that I think are actually the two best skills, and one of them obviously being a personal preference of mine over the other. But let's get into the second best skill in RuneScape, as I said, in my personal opinion, is Invention. I think Invention is such a genius concept for not only an item sync, but also to give more relevance to older items and to just weapons. Like, you can put perks on weapons to make them better and make them more useful in the long run by either putting more damage on it or putting something that your max hit is less but your lower hit will get increased, or you can do more like ricochet damage or something, or with your obviously with your skilling you can get more clue scrolls, or you can craft it quicker, or you can just burn your resources in change of experience. There's so many interesting things you could do in Invention, but that's not even the only thing. It also made so many items more relevant. Think about all the clue items like U composite bows and stuff. They're all over 1.5 million GP because it's needed to get some of the best PVM items, making clue scrolls really relevant. Look at all the items like short bows or something and long bows. They would not be relevant and would be very cheap and probably around elk price if it wasn't for Invention, because you need them for components. And overall, I think it's such a well-designed skill in the long run. I know when it came out it wasn't this good as it is right now, but I just think it's such a good skill and it's something you can always build on top of. And with the components, it can always make things relevant when it comes to crafting new items. Like, look at Zamorak. You needed some other different components to be able to craft greater sunshine and greater death swiftness, etc., and it just made it so that certain other bosses, like old bosses, became more relevant again because they dropped those supplies. And I think that's just an incredible thing. But getting into the most incredible skill out of all of them is archaeology. I think archaeology is the absolute best skill within RuneScape, because not only I know it's just a gathering skill with extra steps, but I feel like it brings so much more to just that. It is you having to go from spot to spot and go into a different area pretty much every 1 or 2 levels, which I think is great. I think all skills when it comes to gathering should really do that to give you variety and make it less boring and give you a little bit of a change of scenery. Because with a lot of skills, as we talked about it before, there's just like one spot that's the best for the majority of it, and the other one are just either, oh, you make a little bit more money here, or oh, it's a little bit more AFK. And with archaeology, it's all the same when it comes to like the way you train, but you just generally just see different places and you uncover different things. And you know, the dig sites are super interesting and have lore, and there's like little quests to unlock more parts of the dig site, and you can unlock these relics that can help you with PVM and other useful things within just the game in general. And that gives another more relevant thing to like other skills, like as I said with divine conversion, or how we used to have sticky fingers that you could just AFK thief and stuff. And all those things I just generally think makes archaeology such a great skill, and it even giving you certain weapons and, as I said, the mysteries and quests and everything about it. But I could see as an Iron Man as well that it's a bit more tedious because you cannot buy the supplies. But there's never been a skill that left me in wonder and just make me wonder what the next, you know, thing would be. And I'm really happy that archaeology is in the skill, and I'm really excited that the team that made archaeology is making Necromancy. So let me know in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video, give it a like. Subscribe if you're new. My name is Valric, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.